All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's session on empowering multilingual AI innovation. I'm just going to give it a minute for participants to continue trickling in, then I'll give a brief introduction and pass it over to our speakers for today. Okay, perfect. I will do a super quick intro. So my name is Julia Neer. I'm a research analyst with the Stimson Center's Strategic Foresight Hub. With the Hub, we manage the Responsible AI Fellowship, which is a partnership that we do with Microsoft's Office of Responsible AI. It's in its third year of the program now, and we're super excited to keep this work going. In the third iteration of the program, we're kind of opening up our fellows and our work to a broader audience. Previously, the fellowship has been kept kind of internal and in a closed group. So our fellows are individuals from all over the global South who work in and around responsible AI policy. We convene them to really talk and share best practices, work together, and help to build a more sustainable future that is inclusive of all parts of the world. So today we're going to be spotlighting two of those fellows in a session on empowering, like I said, empowering multilingual AI innovation. We're thrilled to have as moderator here today, Hiwat Tesfaye from our partners at Microsoft. She will be moderating the session. And like I said, if you're interested in the fellowship, we are beginning to do a little bit more public-facing work around it. So I would encourage you all to check out our website and keep up with our work in the future. Thanks to everyone for being here. And now I will hand it over to Hiwat to get us started.
Thanks, Julia. Hello, everybody. My name is Hiwat Tesfaye. As Julia said, I am the technical advisor in Microsoft's Office of Responsible AI, and I have the pleasure of supporting this fellowship program since its inception back in 2022. This topic that we're going to be discussing today is near and dear to my heart, as AI systems quickly become the way in which we interact with digital spaces. It becomes increasingly important for these systems to work well for different languages, different cultural contexts, and to ensure that the digital divide that already exists doesn't broaden even further now in the age of AI. And so to discuss this topic, we've brought our two wonderful fellows, Everlyn Esiko-Chimoto, Abil Sudarman, to discuss this topic with you all. They have presentations to share. So let me just give a quick intro of both of them, and then I'll hand it over to them to start presenting. So Everlyn Esiko-Chimoto is a fundamental research scientist at Leilapa AI, and also a PhD candidate at the University of Cape Town. And Abil Sudarman is the director at a leading AI association in Indonesia called Korika. And he's also, as a leading expert in Indonesia, project manages the UNESCO AI Readiness Assessment Project. With that, I will pass it off to Everlyn to share her screen and kick off the presentation.
Hello, everybody. Just give me a minute to share my screen, and then we can start off. Can you see my screen and that presentation is coming up?
Looks good.
Yes.
Cool. So as he would just give the introduction, my name is Evelina Siko. I am a fundamental research scientist, and my work mostly revolves around building speech models and natural language models for African languages. And this is also a very special topic for me, empowering multilingual AI, and I'll be doing it with Abil. So just to start off, I'm just going to give you some context on the languages spoken in the world. So what you're seeing on the screen is a map of how many languages are spoken in different countries. And you see that only a handful of the languages have less than 10 languages, being spoken, while the majority have hundreds or more than 40 languages spoken in the countries. And in totality, we have over 1,000 languages, the top 100 featuring more than 7 million speakers each. After just keeping that in mind, I want you to bring your attention to this chart, which essentially shows how close or how aligned is ChatGPT, in the way people in different regions essentially think and essentially process information, where ChatGPT sits right at this corner, encompassing Great Britain, Canada, USA, Japan, whereas majority, remember that picture I just showed you where we have China, India, Indonesia, majority of the rest of the world, ChatGPT doesn't think about them, or rather, there's like a disconnect between how ChatGPT thinks and how those countries and the people in those countries actually think or process information. Now, the big question is how many languages can AI really understand and translate? Seeing that we have over 7,000 languages, and we find that majority of the models actually understand English and some of the European languages, and then just a small sliver caters to the rest of the world, or the rest of the languages. So English sort of takes up the big chunk, and we have essentially less than 100 and sort of is a barrier to global participation. Is quite clear. Why do we have this disparity? And we'll talk about it in three ways. So number one, we have the data imbalance, where most languages lack clean or digitized corpora. This can be systemic, where the countries are using the language of the colonizers. So essentially, the local languages tend to sit back, and sort of the English or French become the economic languages. Then we have also infrastructure and access. So essentially, compute and storage is not necessarily spread evenly across all the regions of the world. They're concentrated in a few first world countries. And then we have governance and policy gaps, where there are very few national AI and language data strategies. And this essentially points to a systemic gap, where all these components that are very important for language to be included in AI models, being spread out well enough. And I'm going to just speak about how we can empower this multilingual innovation. And me and Abil thought about it in a multidimensional way. So since we see all these factors, you sort of want to decentralize or split up how you essentially cover this or tackle this problem. So we have the data-centric roadmap, where you are looking at how do we solve the data problem, the lack of data, the research and infrastructure, how do we solve the compute issue, the lack of compute, lack of infrastructure all around. Then we have policy and governance. How do we bridge that gap where the governance and policies don't cater for multilingual innovation? And then we have ethics and societal empowerment. So essentially now bring together all stakeholders and sort of now pushing the needle forward for multilingual empowerment. I'm gonna just point out a few examples of all these dimensions. We'll first start with the data-centric one, where I think what can boost multilingual innovation is creating new data sets. And a good example is the Masakane Hub. It started first as the Masakane, where a group of Africans came together and started building, creating data sets for the local languages. And this has garnered some interest, and we've gotten funding, and now there's like a bigger effort to create new data sets. So that's the way to go, because if you don't have data, there's no way you're going to add your language to the AI models. And then the other thing since data is quite important, is utilizing alternative data, not just thinking about data in the conventional textual data that you find or online or when you scrape the internet. There is speech data. So instead of just collecting text data, you collect speech. There's also grammatical resources. So there are books that have essentially written down how a language is made up, and you can use that as a way to boost how AI models sort of understand your language, and also using higher resourced, related languages. So, for example, me who speaks Swahili, Swahili is a bigger language, and also who speaks Luya, I can use Swahili as something that sort of augments my adding Luya to the models. Then we have the last point that we have, which is building equitable benchmarks. And the point with this is that for you to be able to improve the models that we currently have, or to even other languages, you have to be able to evaluate those models, and benchmarks help us do this. So, for example, there's Global Picker just recently released, where there's a group of people who came together and they sort of created benchmark that covers 119 languages, and there have been other efforts. I just pointed this out because it's the most recent, that essentially sort of help us understand how well this model is doing at the language with the languages. Then the next dimension is research and infrastructure, where we should look at designing adaptive models. So not just thinking of it as the way we have been thinking about it since 2017, when attention is all you need paper came out. So we're thinking about custom objectives and embedding losses, or diverse architectures that would be better suited for a multilingual environment, or be better suited for a particular language. Also just investing in modeling morphology, discourse, code switching. So how each language is used, there is some variety. So not just thinking of it as a one size fits all. Then something else that is quite important is improving tokenizers, just for the current AI models. If there is a question, just let me know, because currently I can't see the chats. Improving tokenizers for non-English languages. So there has been work that has shown that for languages that don't have the Latin script, it is quite expensive to use a model like ChatGPT. You spend 3 times, 4 times the amount of money you would if you had prompted it with on English. So it's quite important for us to improve the tokenization so that these models are accessible to everyone. Also, boosting compute initiative, so that different regions have AI compute centers. They have cloud credits, so that they can be able to do the work and model and build the AI systems. Now, the third dimension is policy and governance. This is not my forte, but I'm gonna do my best in giving the points. So number one is having a national language data policy, which sort of mandates open data, so that when there is data available, people can be able to use it and incorporate them in building the AI models. But also, this policy should protect privacy and cultural rights. So it shouldn't just be open free for all. We should think about contextually what the country needs, or what the community needs. Also, just as I said, having open data helps. So government providing open source data, so having initiative to create this open source data, and also boosting community ownership. That means when somebody creates a data set, there's a way that they own the data, and using this data sort of feeds back economically to them, and they can be able to grow the data even more. We also have incentivizing localization, where the government can go a long way in providing grants, also having procurement rules just to prioritize language diversity, and not only one language in one country. And then so we see language data policy. There's also AI usage policy. So having like a system prompt that geofences each to gain local cultural context, so that when people from a particular region use a particular AI model, they can gain trust because it suits their context. They are able to build trust with the outputs it gives them. So having such a thing sort of boosts AI usage and multilingual innovation. And the last dimension that we talk about is ethics, where whether you're collecting data, you're building whatever process you are at, there should be community consent on how you are using that data, and there should be involvement from the community. And we also suggest that there should be south to south collaboration, because we've seen from the example that I gave previously, Masakane, people coming together from different regions can boost really and pull forward multilingual innovation. And then we have transparency and accountability. Having open source models, we have seen, has boosted many languages being added or being included in some innovations, and having such is good for all our languages. So having multilingual cards that show you, okay, how this something was built, or also just documenting how data was collected and doing it ethically, is a way to just booster what we are doing for the languages that we have. And last but not least is cultural alignment, which is a big topic that we will go deeper into it. But that essentially just means when you're building any AI model or any NLP model, any speech model, co-design with the local users, train the local researchers and translators plus annotators, so that it just doesn't sit, or the creation is not centralized in one place. And I'm gonna pass it on to Abil so that he can talk more about cultural alignment and give us a specific example. Abil?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you so much. Do you want to still share screen? Maybe can we go to the next slide? Okay, it's easier. So hello everyone. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Abil and I'm from Indonesia. I'm also a responsible AI fellow in the Stephenson Center, and also I'm still a director of the largest AI researcher association in Indonesia, and we do so many AI related projects. Of course, in 2025, most of our research are directed into LLMs and other use cases across Indonesia. And also founded a new AI startup, HR tech solution. So I use not only researching, but I also use some of these AI large language models and serving different kind of users across the countries. And so Indonesia is a bit unique, but so does also other ASEAN countries. So we do have usually have one or two language, but we do have 700 spoken language here in Indonesia, and 19 customary laws. So not only federal laws or state laws, we do have customary laws, and there are some things that illegal or forbidden in our federal law, but it's allowed in customary law and vice versa. And we also have 1,300 ethnic groups, making Indonesia maybe one of the most diverse nation. And we do have each of them different set of norms and values. So, similar to other ASEAN countries like Thailand, Philippines, and maybe also African countries. So if you take a look here in one of our cities, Aceh, where I used to conduct a research from UNESCO, readiness assessment methodology. So I went there for an AI survey. This is a short story. I went there for a survey for the university and then local governments and then local companies, how they're going to use AI and how's their decision making on procuring AI and so on, and their readiness infrastructure. And as an Indonesian myself, I'm really shocked by how different their set of norms and cultural values in Aceh. So Aceh is a 2-hour flight from my city, which is Jakarta, and it's really different there. There's some stuff you have to wear. You have to cover your hair if you're a woman, if you're a Muslim woman, and that law doesn't exist in Jakarta in other cities. So it's specifically for Aceh. And unmarried or unrelated man and woman cannot be seen together in public holding hands. And I'm really shocked by how how different the local cultural values Aceh has compared to Jakarta, my city. So I talked with a kid in the session. So when we conduct a research, there are some staff who bring their children. The- and then I observe for 2 hours, she was really curious about the thing that we're talking about in the seminar, in a workshop. So she tried ChatGPT and she kept talking like for 2 hours or more. And then I realized that AI is not only used by adults. AI is going to be used by our next generation, by our daughters, by our son. And seeing it's being used by a kid from Aceh make me realize that we really need a cultural appropriateness in AI. That is why I'm proposing that Microsoft or big companies, large companies also try to develop the cultural perspective, because we have very diverse AI users, ChatGPT users across the globe. If you remember in our second slides, yeah, the first ChatGPT users is by United States, from United States, and then the second is from, I think it was India, right? It was India, and then the third is from Western countries. I think it's European countries, if I'm not mistaken. UK is it, and then Brazil, and then Indonesia. So second largest ChatGPT users is not Western countries. It's from Eastern countries. It's from Southeast Asia. And that is why we really need to build AI and put our effort for multilingual AI and multicultural AI. So this is one of the example that we did. This is an academic and community research lab program. So this is a Indo-cultural data set. So we have a data set, a question and answer pair. It's a data about culture across 11 provinces. So not only larger cities in Indonesia, but also many provinces. And then they cover like food custom, wedding tradition, local customary laws, and then artistic performance, even regional beliefs, and then some stuff like wedding attire and so on. And this data set really helpful for any LLM models that has been developed in Indonesia, and also some other Southeast Asian countries like AI Singapore built the Sea Lion LLM, and then they use one of these Indo-culture data to really train and evaluate their models about Indonesian culture. And I think this is a really great example and can be also duplicated by other countries. And this is really great because we want AI not only to care about our language, but also culture. If we see in the next slide, please. Okay, so there are some, okay, previous slide. There are some use cases that has not yet been developed by local AI startups. In Corica, we used to work with hundreds of AI startup in Indonesia, and we have not seen a solid use cases about these these use cases like content creation and customer service call, which is a common thing in US already. And then, marketing cold call and then AI job interview and many more, because simply multilingual AI has not been able to spoke really good Indonesian in a way that we can understand. It's really hard. They spoke English really well, but for Indonesian, it's a bit confusing and really hard to understand. If only AI was maybe 30 Indonesian accent and pronunciation, there are a lot of use cases that can be unlocked by Indonesian local startups, and we have not seen some of this. Why does this happen? Maybe if we take a look at the next slide. Okay, so one of the reason is caused by tokenizer. Maybe some of you, if you're working in AI field, AI research or engineering, you're familiar with the thing called tokenizer. So AI doesn't really understand text. So AI only understand tokens. So text has to be converted into tokens. For example, English text, one word usually be converted into one tokens, like set of numbers. But because the vocabulary is in English, it's having a hard time understanding Hindi character, Indonesian language, or Japanese character, or even Korean. I think it has worse numbers in Korean, because it's really hard to understand Korean character. And it's been progressing quite well. For example, Indonesian, now we have a 1.1x, so it's 10% more cost and slower AI inference cost than English. But in the previous year, 2 to 3 years ago, it was, I think, 2.5x worse than English language. So it's been progressing quite well, but we still need to improve, because not only Indonesian, I think a lot of Koreans are using AI, a lot of Japanese are using AI, a lot of Indian are using AI. I think Indian is a top two traffic in ChatGPT, but they have to wait 2 times longer, and if they're using APIs, OpenAI APIs, they're going to be charged 2 times more than if they're going to use English in the prompt. So it is a bit unfair. It is a bit, they're gonna produce a lesser quality result, lesser quality response, and it is a quite a huge problem in low resource language. So that is why we aim to improve this with this webinar. Hopefully there are some regulators from governments, from academia watching this webinar, so we can collaborate together and try to improve. And then next slide, please. Okay, we will be discussing a lot more details, I think, with Heward in the Q&A. And then that's it from me, and terima kasih.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for the very insightful, thought-provoking presentation. Right off the cuff, I think I have a burning question for you both. In your AI-related projects that you guys lead in your respective countries and the research that you do, have you found what kind of AI models seem to be gaining the most adoption in your regions? Abila and Everlyn, you both talked about how expensive it can be to interact, or slow it can be to interact with AI models if the prompt is not in English. So are there any models that you've encountered that are more efficient in Indonesian or in Swahili or other languages that are non-English, non-Latin script, that is starting to gain more adoption in your respective regions?
Okay, shall I go first?
Go for it.
So what we have seen is some of our local companies try to develop LLMs, 70 billion parameter or Singapore tried to develop AI Singapore with 70 billion also parameter, but it's really hard to catch up with uh, front frontier LLMs like from Microsoft, from ChatGPT, from Gemini. So as a user, we don't want LLMs that has been left behind in terms of intelligence. We want the new one. We want the latest one. We want the most capable one. So, and then we still use GPT or Claude or from Google Gemini API, but they're still lack Indonesian language, Indonesian culture. They're still lacking.
Mhm.
But at the same time, we cannot use the local developed LLMs. It's really hard because it's not the most capable one. In terms of using AI, even for 10% difference, we 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 want to pay more, even for
Mhm.
10% smarter AI. So that's why I think even our local companies and some of government from Singapore try to develop our own LLMs. I think it's less likely to be adopted massively because of the capabilities is not in the top 5 of AI models. So that's what I'm saying. So still models from big companies like GPT and then Google and then Anthropic.
Thank you, Bill. Everlyn, do you have a perspective to share on this question?
I think it's similar to Abil's, where yes, there are some models that are being developed, and we are developing some of these models, but it's hard to build to compete with the hype that or the speed at which some of these LLMs are being built, like OpenAI models. So whenever they come out, it's such a big hype. People go flock around, and whereas there's some disparity in some languages, so you'll find that it's very bad in Luya, so nobody will ever think of using the Luya language on these frontier models, but they would use Swahili, and Swahili has gotten better. So even you'd find, surprisingly, a model like DeepSeek would be good in Swahili. So you'd, depending on the languages that you want to use, you find that people tend to flock to the bigger models other than the smaller models that are dragging behind. Yeah.
Got it. Thank you both so much. Moving on to our next question. Everlyn, this one is for you. You were recently at the EMNLP conference in China that had a strong focus on improving multilingual performance of AI. Through that conference, or even before you went to that conference, it would be really great to hear if there are any specific areas of research with respect to multilingual innovation that you are most excited about, that piques your, I guess, energy the most.
Yes. I'll start with my what piques my energy, and then I'll go to the experiences that I've gotten at EMLP. So what piques my interest is when we are augmenting the data sets that we have with interesting or sort of peculiar data sets that we couldn't think of. So for example, for a language that doesn't have text data, but they have pictures written in different scripts, so you sort of have, okay, can we take images of this particular book and then now have data for this language, or some data for this language? Or you're looking at, okay, this data set doesn't have any text data, but it has some speech data, maybe some recordings where they have been hosted somewhere, or a radio station has it. So using sort of the unconventional web script text data sort of piques my interest, because the key thing is still data, and we can't it's gonna take us a while to bridge that gap of, okay, this is where we are at with the low resource languages, and this is where we need to get, and we need to be more creative about it. Yeah.
Fantastic.
And
And any interesting learnings from the EMNLP conference?
I realized I forgot that one at some point. So in that particular one, I think there were a lot of innovations around incorporating linguistics at different levels of the modeling pipeline, which was quite interesting. So you find that people have, so that you cover more languages, they have something like adapters or neurons that are linguistically oriented. There have been, especially in the multilingual and language diversity track, there were very many papers that covered sort of uh, benchmarking linguistic. How well does can model X break down a particular language? How close is it to um, defining language X like a linguist? So it's essentially not thinking about it in terms of, so if you have a lot of data like English, you can get away with a lot of data. But if you have less data, you want to get away with, like, let me say, a summary. And linguistic information like grammatical books, I was lost there. Can you hear me?
You're back. Mhm.
Okay. Where was I? Where did you lose me?
I think you were talking about benchmarks and the like generating a linguistic summary of something.
Yes. So when you have less data, having like a summary sort of will go a long way in you including such a language. So that's a trend that I saw. Also, cultural awareness, which is quite interesting. There have been a number of people curating data sets, sort of aligning the different LLMs to their cultures, because it's quite dangerous, or it builds mistrust when an LLM doesn't understand culture or gives something that's culturally misaligned. So those are the two distinct sort of tracks that I've seen gaining traction. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I'm going to ask a follow-up question on the benchmark piece to Abil in the context of Indo, the culture benchmark data set. But just for one more thing for you, Evelyn, I think I've heard you and others also talk about adapters, and would love to get a bit more of an explanation for our audience here, what adapters are and in what context they can be used.
So adapters are essentially, let me break it down. So in a model, we have different components that go into learning the different types of information. So we train them, and whenever you hear a model is this number of parameters, that's just the different components that make up that particular model. Now, with these components, you can sort of now specialize. Let me call them as that, specialize. So you have a component that specializes, let's say, in English. I have another component that specializes in Swahili, or another component that's whichever language it is. And when I train it, you sort of um, for the different languages you're training it as, you sort of tune that particular adapter to be very good in that language, and that's how it's trained. We don't get to interact with it as such, it's because it happens during training, but it's just an adapter is like a specialized component that's not as big as the base component, so it's easier to manipulate. Yeah.
And can it generally be used with mostly open source models or added to open source models, or any closed
Yes,
source models as well?
especially our go-to library when you're building models is the transformers. It's inbuilt in transformers, so you can add adapters. I think Whisper models also use the Whisper speech models use adapters, so it can be easily added. Yeah.
Fantastic. And Bill, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Is it like mixture of expert architecture, something like that?
Something similar to that, but a mixture of experts. The expert can be a bit bigger than an adapter.
I
So an
see.
adapter can be one component, but an expert can be like a bigger, like a set of components. Yes.
I see, see. Okay, okay.
Very
We'll look
helpful.
into it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Bill, I'm going to turn to you now.
Okay.
the Indo culture data set that you talked about, the benchmark. I'm curious how much more of this type of benchmark development this specific data set has spurred within Indonesia. If there's if it has incentivized additional benchmark development or incentivized the use of that benchmark by the AI companies and startups you work with. Just curious to understand how it has started to accelerate AI innovation within Indonesia. Because I genuinely believe, despite how many limitations benchmarks have, they are very imperfect methods of measuring performance or safety or anything like that. But yet they are still effective tools at incentivizing improving performance in a particular direction. So just curious to know if that has, if you've seen any acceleration within Indonesia due to this benchmark development.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, I have not seen a very huge increase in acceleration because mainly data set like that is usually being used by independent developers. Like for example, some university students or some researchers in academia, but startups not really using that data set. Maybe some of them, if they are serving huge users base across Indonesia, like for example, Gojek is like an Uber here in Indonesia. So they're serving millions different of users across the countries, but it doesn't really accelerate the AI development especially in Indonesian language that much. We still need to have support from a local government. Let's say they have in Badan Riset Indonesia. So it's a research agency for Indonesia. They have this huge corpus text for Indonesian language that can be used for LLM training or fine tuning, but up until today, they have not released any of the data, whether to, big players like Google, Microsoft, or Amazon, or not even they're not even developing local LLMs inside the government. So there's so much data that our government holds, the corpus, the text data, video data, uh, images data, but they're not being put to use. And I think we need more support from the government rather than from the communities. Because our communities, I mean, it's quite different from AI developers community, like in Europe, where they have a funding for developing large language model, like in Hugging Face, you can see that a lot of open source model by small startups, and then in China also there's small startups that beat most of the benchmark from frontier models. In Indonesia, we don't have that. We don't have the funding. We don't have the GPUs to do so. So that is why the data set that I mentioned earlier, first of all, it's not that huge. The data set is not that huge compared to what all of you have in US or in the UK. So we need more bigger support from the big players like government.
No, that totally makes sense. And to kind of echoes Everlynn's earlier point about the need for the policy gap that she was talking about, the need for national AI strategies and things like that to get more government more intentionally plugged into the direction AI is going within a country. Thank you so much, Abdul. We have I have a couple more questions, and there are questions coming in from the audience as well, which is great to see. There's a question from Dirk Hoffman. I'm just going to read it out loud, and either of you can take this one. It says, where do you think local and regional language will be within AI models in 5 years from now? So putting on your AI futurist hat.
Maybe Evelyn can go first. I have to think about it for a minute.
I'll try to think as I go, especially in the context of Kenya and Africa. I think we would be, especially with the upcoming grassroots communities, the upcoming startups that are trying to build languages for the AI models for their languages, we would be in a much better position. So you'd find some languages have been revitalized or have much more data than expected because there is concerted effort being put into growing said languages. However, would we be at the same level as English? Maybe not. Maybe would be still playing catch up, but would be at a much better position in the sense that there'll be more languages covered. If not, the good thing is that when big tech sort of realizes that, oh, there's this language that has enough data, somehow it gets incorporated in some ways. There is discussion to have about how they incorporate it, but there would be a lot more languages being incorporated, and not necessarily such gloom. That's my optimistic view on where languages will be, because I work in the sector. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you, Evelyn. Bill, any perspective you'd like to share?
Yeah. So I think we're going to have a huge improvement if there's an AI or a device that can listen to our conversation in Indonesian and try to put it into training data. Well, it's a huge privacy risk, but here's the problem. So you can understand American by text, by what you have in Reddit, for example, but by what you have in uh, news outlet they've written in Wikipedia or anything. But there are some countries in Southeast Asians, even the language is spoken. We don't really have like written language here in Indonesia. The 700 language that I mentioned earlier is actually not written, it's actually spoken. So, for example, I have a Filipino friend if when I play games, right? So they speak Tagalog. They text me in Tagalog, and I try to Google Translate whatever they say. It doesn't work. You cannot translate any Tagalog text with Google Translate or whatever translating AI. You cannot. So that's why, in order to understand our language, our culture really well, you have to actually listen. And I have not find a way to do this without having a huge privacy risk. I think the clear winner in multilingual AI, I'm sorry, I have to say this. I think it will be the social media owners, like X, Grok from X. They have really the platform is full of, Indonesian or Filipinos. They try to have a conversation naturally in natural language and not in a blog post or something, because it's really different. For English, you can have a very similar language when you see it on Medium posts or LinkedIn posts or blog posts or Twitter. It's very similar, but Indonesian is the first one is social media. Social media led AI research going to win in multilingual, but we still need to able to listen to Indonesian conversation day to day in order to really understand uh, Indonesian language or any other Southeast Asian language or low resource language.
Thank you both for your perspective. That's very, very interesting. Let's move on to another audience member's question. And I'm recognizing we only have about 11 minutes left, so we'll just take a couple more questions. This one is from Sarah, and she says, what do you think this, and I think by this she means the multilingual AI gap that exists, means in terms of the creation of disinformation using AI? Does this, for example, imply that there may be less disinformation because these systems don't work well for other languages? Or would it be less effective given that AI, written, spoken outputs have less data to draw on, and thus these may be of lower quality?
Um, So I think I have a bit of different opinion here in Indonesia because AI doesn't really cause disinformation, at least in Indonesia. Human does. So if there's any misinformation or a hoax or AI generated videos about our politician or presidential candidates, within 5 days we know it's fake. All over the social media users, we're gonna know someone's gonna say it's fake, it's AI, and then that's it. But human create more disinformation, and let's say we're in presidential election campaign era, and then there's some political party try to say this, and then some other political party try to say this. So it's not AI, but it's human who really cause this information. If AI caused it, someone will notice, and everyone in the country would know in like 5 days or so. So I think the answer to that. So I think AI is not really the cause, but human itself.
AI is just a tool that can accelerate
Just do it.
human ambitions, whether for
Yeah.
nefarious reasons or not. Evelyn, any thoughts from your end?
I think my thoughts are we need the separation between knowledge and language. So I don't think the models not understanding a particular language contributes to misinformation. That speaks to sort of a knowledge gap in the in the AI model, and not necessarily if you're not good at speaking. Essentially, I'm saying if you're not good at speaking Luya, there wouldn't be much misinformation you give. You'd be essentially just be spitting out garbage. Nobody, there's no trust there. There's no propagating of misinformation there. However, if the model was built with some data that may not be accurate because somebody didn't check it correctly or something happened underneath, the knowledge that the system has is already wrong. So if you can prompt it in a particular language, regardless of the language, there'll be misinformation. So just separating language understanding and knowledge for these models could be it's a way of thinking about if this misinformation question. So I don't think the multilinguality plays the biggest part. Yeah.
Thank you both. Let's move on to one other question. This is from Rebecca. She's asking, beyond translation, how can experts in language, culture, and area studies play a larger role or contribute in creating multilingual AI systems? So not necessarily your machine learning engineers and computer scientists, but people that are experts in language and culture and other areas of study. And how can they play a bigger role in creating multilingual AI? And then are there specific AI companies, organizations you would suggest that would, I guess, pull in these types of experts?
I could take this.
Yeah, you can go first.
How can experts? I want to give a very simple answer, to be honest, is essentially use your language. Let's say, let me just read the experts, the experts that she mentioned.
Experts mentioned were experts in language, so linguists, cultural experts, and I guess other social studies areas like anthropologists and sociologists and others that can provide a multidimensional view to improve multilingual AI systems.
Yes. So forget translation, just now creating good monolingual or data from your language. So if you are a linguist, write the glosses or the segmentation online, collaborate with other people. So it's more of two-layer, create your data sets, and also now I think your second question leads to that, collaborate more with other people who are also building data sets, building benchmarks in this particular space. If it's in the African context, I would point you to Masakane, and this is sort of self-improvement, self-marketing, Lelapa. But I am not so sure about the other continents. And also there are some organizations within different countries that we can talk more if you can I am online, so you can find me and I can give you suggestions.
Awesome. Thank you, Everlyn. Bill, any perspective on your end?
So how can experts in language, culture, and area studies play a larger role? Oh, okay. I think one of them is we need a lot of even unstructured data about specific type of arts performance or languages or just conversation. It's going to help a lot. So in Indonesia, so we do have 700 languages, but we don't have it in any written book. Even if we go to local bookstore in a rural areas, we don't have it written anywhere. So it will be really great if we could have maybe like some books so that we can use in fine-tuning data or training data, but we don't. And that is a, a huge problem here in Indonesia. So I think creating a data set would be a great help to the creating a multilingual AI.
Mhm. And if I could add to that too, it's also about digitizing that data set once it's written.
Digitize.
Yeah, in Ethiopia, which is the country I'm from, we have millennia of written content in the source language. That's called is kind of like the Latin of the country, and then the languages that stemmed from that that exist today. And a lot of that content is just not digitized, so you don't see
Yeah.
improved performance in some of the languages that are spoken in Ethiopia. But I have noticed with GPT-5, there was at least from my anecdotal assessments of the model, slightly improved performance in Amharic, at least, which is the language that I speak, which has been really cool to see. But I agree, like I think it's that data set creation is important, especially if it's digitized. Wonderful. Okay, so we'll take one more question, and then I think we can go ahead and wrap up then. This one is from Aaron. It's another fellow of ours. He says, thanks for the amazing presentation. Should there be greater demand and increased investment in smaller localized AI models to complement large foundation models, particularly to enhance linguistic diversity and reduce energy consumption as well? Everlyn, you seem very excited about this one. Why don't you go first?
I think it's a resounding yes, because as much as there's so many languages that having like a centralized sort of development won't cut it in any way. So having localized, how Ellen put it, sort of decentralized development would be the key to many things. Also, as much as we can use AI models, the chat GPTs, building upon it can be a bit difficult because they're so big. So having a smaller model and a more targeted effort would sort of boost more languages being included in the AI migration, if I can call it that. Yes, so that's just my short answer for that.
Thank you, Everlyn. Bill, any perspective on your end?
Yeah, I would say it's we have to build a better tokenizer. As I said earlier, ChatGPT for Korean language has been improved by 2 times for the past 3 years. 2 times more efficient, 2 times faster, 2 times cheaper, and maybe few percent better, maybe 20 or 30% better because we improve the tokenizer that we use in large language model. So I think it's a good idea that we can build the a better, or maybe we can build a largest tokenizer that caters all vocabularies across multiple languages so that we can you know other language can use it much more efficiently. Of course, the tokenizer is almost perfect in English, but in other languages like Japanese, Korean, Hindi, Tagalog, it's still it needs a lot of improvement. So yeah, I think improvement in tokenizer algorithm technology, it's going to be great.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. We are just at the top of the hour, and apologies for those that had questions in the Q&A that we didn't get to. Thank you all for attending. Everlyn, Abil, I know it's extremely late in the part of the world that you guys are dialing in from, so just want to say thank you for dialing in and sharing your thoughts and your expertise with the audience. We look forward to conducting a few more of these webinars and sharing perspectives from our fellows throughout the rest of the year. So please tune in to our posts on LinkedIn and the Stimson Center website as well, where we'll feature the additional webinars to come. Thanks, everybody.